All right, Tom, I'm going to jump in. We've got great comments that are going to bring all the good points right to the surface. You ready?
Ready.
All right. Matt Horn, he says, this issue is a daily challenge for me. I am really dissatisfied in my job as I am in sales, and our company has been sold twice in the last 18 months with about 4 new CEOs in that same time, all while our products and solutions drop in quality, features, and innovation. The company was once number 1 in the market, and now we struggle to compete in almost any offering we submit. I myself feel embarrassed about the product when offering it, as I don't believe the quality or technology is worth the money the client would pay. The challenge is we are continually asked by management to remain optimistic while they admit we have technology issues, and then we obviously are still pressed to hit our sales target. I have to agree that my mindset is lacking and could improve, and so I'm taking an active approach towards this. But surely there does come a point where optimism becomes delusion? He asked on a question. We could probably stop with that one comment. I think he just brought up, some of the big question on the balance, the tension between change your attitude or when do we need to change the circumstances?
Wow, that's a good point. Because if you work somewhere, you're in a career, you're in a business, there's always going to be change, challenge, and disruption that comes.
Yeah.
And so how do you face it? Well, of course, the right mindset is going to be a huge asset or liability if it's the wrong mindset.
Mm-hmm.
But then you've got your own integrity, right? The principles and values that you live by. And I think once you see a lessening of the intensity of what you supported, standing up for quality and integrity and the things that you stand for, then you've got to get in the middle of it. You've got to get into the middle of it and understand, hey, are we moving forward towards where we were and where we want to be, or are we settling for a new standard?
Yeah.
And I think if your mindset's right, you're positive, you're a difference maker, you want to go make it happen, you're solving problems, and the company's making whatever changes they can, even though it might be longer or more difficult than you want it to, then you got some hope. If the trend and the effort behind it isn't in the right direction, I don't know if delusional is the right word, but it's a different picture.
It's a different picture. And Tom, this was, he posted that there were, well, here, let me read a couple more because they had to do with work. So there was a couple threads in the responses that I wasn't expecting. So there's a couple more in regards to work changes. Marty Winger, he says, it depends on whether it's something just personally irritating like the thermostat or whether it's something that interferes with our ability to provide excellent customer care. Personal irritation, as long as it's not actual harassment, I can change my attitude. But if it's going to do bad for my customers, I'll pursue every option to correct or change the situation. Timothy Driver, sometimes you have to change your circumstances, especially when you're being prepped for a position, then a new leader comes in. And just like that, the position is no longer available. You have to either move somewhere else in the company or quit and move to a new organization. So there was a thread of people who are, and every one person who responds is probably relates to 1,000 other people listening out there. To work changes, situation in work changing, and maybe that's indicative just of the time that we're in. Somebody else posted that, and I'm not pulling it up right now, but they posted just the changes in work in regards to the current pandemic. So we have a lot of people and things have changed for better or worse in the workplace. And I didn't foresee that when I posted the question. And so they're having to look at this issue and go, yeah, things have changed, for those where it changed for the worse. Do I change my attitude or do I need to look for another option?
I remember years ago, Seth Godin made a post and he said, the middle is gone. And what he was talking about in business, you either need to strive for like Howard Partridge says, a phenomenal experience, right? Everything is just the highest level of experience. We're going to take care of our customers. We're going to go the extra mile, and you charge a premium for that. Or you come in at the other end of this, at the other end, which is, hey, we're going to try to compete on, value at the minimum price, right? And for small business people, that is tough because that segment's kind of getting dominated by scale, by big boys.
Yeah.
And so what happens is businesses will get kind of trapped in the middle, and they don't feel like they want to go the extra mile to charge what they need to charge in order to provide the experience. And so they lower their price, which then limits their ability to provide the services that they were. And so depending on what you signed up for when you joined that business is going to give you, it could give you some challenges.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And and it's not unique to any one industry. I see it all the time. I mean, there's car dealerships that sell the same brand of cars, but some of them operate on the high end of that, and some operate on the lower end of that, and they figure out a way to carve their niche, and people gladly pay a little bit more.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I didn't, Tom. It's interesting as we're talking about this. I just didn't foresee the relevance of this question right now in regards to the workplace, because we've seen so much volatility and see so much change. So this is going to be relevant for a lot of people who, again, are sitting there right now asking this question. Work has changed.
Here's what I've seen in the change of work, and that is that they're isolated, disengaged. Far more communication is via camera. And if the group of people you're working with aren't naturally good communicators, then there's going to be less of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so that combined with the added pressure, the pressure of, the pandemic, maybe a spouse lost their position, or you're dealing with kids who are at home, and what you really need is leadership who is focused on nurturing and building the right kind of relationship. And if they're struggling, it's hard for them to do it. And so we kind of get the double whammy. We get a business that starts to struggle because of something beyond their control, and then the built-in communication and those things that really hold the business together in time of disruption wasn't there to begin with, and so another flaw opens up.
Yeah. It's interesting, Tom. I mean, you talked about relationships, and I think that's going to be top of the list, or it is, as people talked about some of the issues here. It's relationships where they have the biggest struggle, even though now we just had the guy who talked about the product itself has deteriorated somewhat, but you also, I'm in a guy's, it's kind of an Christian influencers prayer group that meets every week. And one of them talked this morning about the pressure that he's feeling right now. They've got a big launch, some big work stuff, and he is working from home now because their office got shut down or whatever, and his kids are there, and just the difficulty of focus and going deep in his work when he's at home with kids, which, man, I get. That's why I'm in my office a mile from my house right now, because I think that there's 11 family members at the house as I speak. But yeah, man, again, the changes in regards to this time that we're in. Well, here's another one just on the overall topic, Tom. Brad Goring, I think is how you say his name. He says, I always start with checking my attitude. What is it that I can control in the situation? What can I give to make it better? Not just for me, but for everyone. How can I lead to a better outcome? Have I sought clarity of where the pinch exists? Have I been clear about my expectations? If I've done my part, then yes, it should be a sign that it's time for the circumstance to change. Even when that time comes, it's not always immediate change, especially if there are unrelated commitments to be filled. Good questions, though, to vet. Again, is it, I thought that was a good little filter, and we should all have one for, okay, let me audit myself according to my own attitude. And of course, bring myself to a positive attitude. I mean, it's the point of this. It's the crux of this. But do I get to a point of saying I'm there, and it's still not good enough?
I think he's spot on. Brad is spot on. There's three questions that I love. And you can apply it to yourself. You can apply it to a customer. You can apply it to leadership. but they kind of go like this. And I'm going to apply this to myself since this question was to the individual listener. What am I thinking, feeling, doing right now in relationship to work? Do a deep dive, get real. Am I worried? Am I anxious? Am I embarrassed? Am I concerned? Because you've got all these inputs and you may not have digested them all, right? Because an email comes across with a tone, a coworker says something that you haven't really heard before. The customer complaint box seems to get a little more active every day. And so you've got to do it, like Dad said, a checkup for the neck up. What am I doing? What am I thinking? What am I feeling? All of those things kind of come into it. And then you ask the next question. How do I want to be thinking? What do I want to be doing? And how do I want to be feeling? In other words, this is where I am right now. Where do I want to be? And so now you've got kind of an anchor at both ends and you're in the middle. Okay, so how do I get from where I am to where I want? And that's where you can dig in and say, look, is this a mindset issue? Is this me not really learning the new software that's really killed? I mean, is that really what it is? They integrated a new system and I'm not comfortable on it and it's kind of wigged me out. That's something I could learn.
Yeah.
Or is it something beyond my control? Like I can do all this stuff, I can adjust it. Now, the good news is this. The right attitude, the right approach, given it 100% while you're in it is going to position you to help move it to where you want or to create the landing spot somewhere else. There is no downside.
Yes.
Right? To getting your attitude and your approach right. And then you get that right. But some people, and I've had a lot of questions through the years, hey, I discovered my organization's doing this. I don't think it's right. And I look at them and I go, I think you're probably right. That's a circumstance that's got to change for you right away because you can't aid and abet in something that you know is not right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I'm real careful. Hey, is that an individual person problem or is that a philosophy or a culture of the organization? Because those are two different things. You handle those in two different ways.
Yeah. Yeah. So on that, yeah. So that where it's a moral, ethical, obvious thing, but here, Katarzyna, she says it depends. Sometimes nothing needs to change, only needs to be tolerated. That word tolerated is a red flag for me. And I'm going to go right into Brian Lynchard. He says, I've been struggling with something along these lines lately. I've been trying both approaches, but I really think I need to change the circumstances. And I've been working on that. I know what it can be. I need to get there. So, as people are looking at it, yeah, that'd be a great place to, like you talked about, Tom, there. Is there something wrong with an individual that you can change? Is there something wrong with the company that you can't? And her word tolerated, I don't like that word. To me, that word, if you're tolerating, you're in trouble. I think, even that, I mean, I'm so good. People are so good at endurance. I'm going to endure something. I've seen that with, I want to pick on Christians somewhat who think they're doing the right thing. They're doing the altruistic thing. They're in work that is, toxic, is bad, doesn't do much for them, but man, they're going to provide for their family and they stick in it. And I know a lot of people do this, but stick in it. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm going to do the righteous thing. And they stick in it. And it's just depleting them. They're not able to be the fullness of themselves, but they feel like they should be grateful for the job. But maybe we should hit on that. If you've got a job, you're making money, come on. Really, first world problems, you're going to complain because the spirit of the place isn't good or the product or service isn't good. And we tend to minimize that. And as Katarzyna said, tolerate or endure it. I'll just explain. I'll profess my own bias with that. I have a really hard time with that. Again, if you're doing what you need to do to keep a roof over the head and food on the table, that's great as a short term. But to do that for a year, 2 years, 5 years, a decade, man, I don't see that serving everyone best. What do you think?
I would have to ask more what it means. And I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Let's say you've got a job and you love it. Everything about it's great. The people are great. But for 6 months of the year, you're working in a warehouse and it's 100 degrees out there. You're just going to have to get really comfortable. I mean, you're just going to have to go in. Yeah, it's hot. I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I mean? That's just the nature of it. So that might be what the toleration is in that regard. Um, if it's something more significant than that, then I'm kind of with you. I'm like, I think we always imagine what could go, that it's going to be worse wherever we go. A lot of people do that. And I think, wait a second, it could be better. When we had a bunch of salespeople on our team, they would routinely come in kind of slyly sometimes. Hey, yeah, I'm having, blah, blah, blah. They're talking about an account and they let me know they're hiring. And it was just a message that there was always opportunities out there.
Yeah.
And I would look at them and I'd say, you know what, if you're a customer facing person, like in sales, and you're not getting recruited on a regular basis, then you're not doing a good job.
Good response.
So
Yeah.
I'd say congratulations to them. But I guess the toleration thing, I need to know more
Yeah.
because, well, this is a whole different subject, so I'm not going to go there. But we're not big fans of the word tolerate. We would much rather love than tolerate.
Exactly. Absolutely. Well, so come to the perspective of when we know that if somebody has a negative attitude and they're going to bring that, every place is going to be negative. There's that old pithy quote, what was the place like that you worked? Oh, it was terrible. The people were horrible. The product was terrible. Do you think this other place is going to be better? No, it'll probably be the same because obviously you have that attitude. And we have that perspective of you can't escape your problems. You're going to bring your problems with you. Okay. That said, but now back to who was it who asked Brad talking about those questions? He asked himself, if we bring ourselves up to our most positive self, and you said something a minute ago, reminded me of your dad's statement, positive thinking won't let you do anything, but it'll let you do everything better than negative thinking will. So, okay, let's assume that we're able to do that. There are just absolutely environments, and we've all experienced it, where we are able to flourish more than others. And even if the people aren't bad, the management's not bad, the product or service isn't bad. I mean, I've been in some great circumstances. Now I haven't done a lot of time as an employee, but just in business situations where everything was pretty great, but it just, and again, it could sound, somebody could pawn it off as first world problems. And I didn't enjoy it, or I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't care. I started a business, a long time ago that did really well. It was one of the quickest succeeding, least risk. It was pretty great. I just didn't care about the product. It was a marketing product in the lending and realtor industry. And I just didn't care. At the end of the day, I just didn't care. Nothing wrong with it. And somebody else may have absolutely found a heart care and a passion, but I just didn't. And so I left that, and that maybe that was selfish. At the time, it probably was. My family could have used the money that I was already making that I walked away from. So I'm not discounting that either. I don't want to be unwise and just flighty with it. But I do, and I know you do too, Tom. We put a lot of, and somebody said that here in one of the comments about just how life's too short, I think is what she said, to spend the most time we spend anywhere, which is true for most people working, and not be able to be fully yourself and not have something that you enjoy, at least, even if it's not the most altruistic thing out there, but at least something that you care about, enjoy to some degree. I have a hard time not citing that, but then I know there's people with great stories for themselves or their parents or a grandparent or something that just worked and put in their time. It wasn't their passion, but they did a good job and supported their family. And that's honorable as well. And I don't want to discount that. Sometimes I'm hesitant I don't want to put that down. My gosh, it's hard for me. Again, I'm just exclaiming my bias to not go, oh, I want people to want to have what I have and to love what they do every day, which I know you do as well, Tom.
Yeah. And I think, sometimes we get put in a place that's not a perfect fit. There's personalities that we work with that kind of rub us the wrong way. And we can even change our view of that relationship that allows us to do well. I know that, and probably everybody goes through this stage where you try to change everybody. You try to make, it's like you move into the room, right? And you want all the furniture exactly where you want it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way life is, you know. People leave stuff around and they move chairs around and everything else. And then I started, instead of trying to change people, saying, okay, what's so unique about this person? Wow. You know, you start digging into those questions, you start getting the backstory. And almost every time you get a backstory on someone and how do you think that way? And where did you come from? And it starts changing that relationship, and the idiosyncrasies, the uniqueness, the quirkiness, all those things that were rubbing you the wrong way, all of a sudden make them kind of the only person who can solve a problem the way they do it.
Yeah.
But that takes a lot of effort. We do DISC certification and DISC training, DISC, where we really understand personality styles. And a lot of times, a lot of the friction in environment that we tolerate is because people don't know how to communicate. And so as a leader, one of the things you can do is learn how to communicate, and then bring in others who can teach your team how to communicate. I mean, these save marriages, they save relationships on a regular basis. So it's just, sometimes it's two good people with different personalities, different ways of going at something. They're hitting heads all the time. And when they understand each other, it's like all of a sudden the relationship is healed. And none of these that we're talking about are moral or ethical things right now. These are just, am I fit in this place, and do I get along with the other people here?
Yeah. Yeah. It's an unfortunate, I think, reality that you want to think that if you have a group of people who are, let's say we got a group of negative people, that just put one positive person in there and it's going to change it. It seems like the power often goes with the negativity. That's where we're prone to fall. And more often that we'll see a group of people and have one negative person that drags everybody down. I've seen that so many times. And I know so many people are in places where, it may be one person. So can you change your attitude with that one person? I have been, again, in environments like that where, especially if that person had a leadership role, they're not going away. They had ownership, partnership, whatever. They're not going away. I'll just admit my lack of tolerance for that. And I'll leave a good situation otherwise, because it's not worth bringing down my own attitude. On this, this quote attributed to Confucius: choose a job you love and you will never have to work a day in your life. I don't, even as we talk about this and finding a place that fits you, that you can flourish, I don't ascribe to that. And I think we talked about that recently, Tom. That, my gosh, I've not, my most favored work, which is what I'm doing now. There's a lot of just work. There's a lot of hard work. There's a lot of stuff that I do. I continue to try to delegate all that I can, but there's some things that if it's going to be at its best, it's on my plate to do. And sometimes I feel like it's too much. I don't enjoy this. I don't enjoy some of the podcast production stuff of going in and figuring out a good intro. I like doing this right here. This is the fun part. If this was all I did, I'd say that's pretty fun, man. We just talked all day, took great topics, heard from awesome people, and talked to great conversations. That would be great, but it's not. Somebody's got to do the intro. Somebody's got to do the outro. And that's me, because I'm talking about the shows coming up that I did. I could try to delegate them. I think that would take away from some of the authenticity. If it's going to be quality, there's some things I got to do that's just work. So I do want to put that caveat there. I'm not talking about the work, find the thing that just play. It's just play. That doesn't exist. That would be me mountain biking all day. It's just, I don't get paid for that.
I think, it's like we all want the pithy quote, that we all want the mic drop ending to the story. We all want, the client to say yes to the big contract, whatever it is that, launching the new marketing project, whatever it is, we all love that. but that's just the visible outcome of all the work that went into it.
Yeah.
And one of the kind of things that I look at is you've seen people who work out and they'll do that. I don't even know what the exercise is called, but they will, they'll stand with both feet together and then they'll jump up on a bench or they'll jump up on a box, right?
Yeah. 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 Whatever. I know what you're talking
What,
about.
what and so they'll do, and so their
It's like
goal is,
plyometrics or something.
yeah. And so you'll see it and, some guy will all of a sudden be able to jump like 5 feet in the air, just standing flat foot, jump up onto a box 5 feet high, right?
Yeah.
Almost as tall as they are. Well, you're building your muscles on the way up. And when you jump back down, you're strengthening your bones, okay? Because that pounding, so the stress that you're putting yourself under is making you stronger. But it's not limitless. I mean, why not do a shortcut? Why not just jump off of a 40-story building and
Yeah, exactly.
right? Because that would equal like 100 of those little jump downs.
Yep.
But that's not the way we're wired. And so I think we have to look at our work and say, okay, I love what I do, and jumping on a box 20 times a day, the payoff is great health,
Mm-hmm.
and it impacts every area of my life. That's worth it. But if your job is like jumping off a 40-story building,
Mm-hmm.
where you're just pancaked at the end of it, that's a different kind.
Yeah.
Dad was a big believer. He did what he loved, and he taught every single day. You don't have to love everything you do. In other words, he knew that to deliver the way he wanted to deliver, he had to stay in great shape.
Yeah.
And he didn't love every aspect of staying in great shape.
I want to add another piece of this, Tom, that there is also, as people are looking and grappling with this, it's relevant to know who you are, to know how you flourish. I'll never forget being on a cycling team. I was over in Europe and had a group of guys, and had one guy who was really struggling, just from even from a depression aspect, was really struggling. And for me, I was less than I am today as far as being able to cope with people and handle people, but it was really difficult. And there's some people I get along with. There's some people I don't. There are some I do well here speaking to aspiring people. I went to a children's home and tried to talk to these kids, thought I was going to change their life. I am incompetent at this point in my life at people who don't really care to aspire, as waking them up. I'm not that good. Thank goodness there are people that can do that. So back in this environment, I had this guy who was really struggling, and it was really difficult for me to be in. Now I had a good friend on the team who, it almost gave him life to work with this guy and to nurture him along. And it was just one of those things that got me to seeing, gosh, I'm not bad for struggling with this necessarily. And he's not necessarily better for being able to do it. It's different roles. We're very different people. He's a policeman today, something that I have I would be a terrible policeman. I'm conflict averse. I'd be the worst policeman ever. I'd say, oh, everybody gets off free. It would be horrific, but to realize that we do have, and I thought about this because you talked about personality styles, Tom, that we need to look at that in an arena, because again, I see most of the time when we're in a job that's difficult, we're looking for a reason to justify staying there. Most aspiring people, I'll say, are. Obviously you've got negative people who are always looking for a reason to leave, but at this level of humanity that we're talking to here, most people are going to be looking for a reason to stay, and they're going to ultimately, I find, discount some of the realities of them. And to look at one, and I appreciate the person who says and looks at it and goes, you know what, it's good. I don't really have some huge reason not to be here, but I think that there's more. I think I've got more in me. So I wanted to pull that out, because even here amongst this aspiring group, as I put this out, if I go down through here and kind of list them out, there's a lot of people who said it's all about attitude, and that's how they perceive it. Sarah, more often than not, I need to change my attitude. Chris, attitude, 100%. Evan, attitude. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Dennis, focus on changing the circumstances. You spend a life looking for situational happiness. We have a lot of people who do that. Had a ton of people who just said both. It's just Kevin says, yes, it's both. Chris, it could be one or the other. And in some instances, both. A lot of people there. And I think most, again, I'll use that word aspiring, Tom. Most open-minded people are going to say, well, of course it's both. But man, the nitty gritty happens when we look at where we are now and say, is this, if I have some frustration, which everybody has some, is it me that needs to change? Or do I need to change the circumstances? And it's interesting too. Eric Harrison, he says, having worked for myself my entire career, I can say that for me, the only answer is my attitude, my performance. Limitations on myself and my ability to lead others depend solely and completely on my attitude. That's interesting too. I mean, we're talking about the workplace, but if you own it, it's another different set of, this question is a differing perspective.
Yeah, Eric's one of our Ziglar coaches, and I like what he said, because I think whether somebody writes their name on your paycheck or you write your name on your own paycheck, you're always working for yourself. Wherever you are,
granted,
you're working for yourself. A great leadership question. In one of the talks that I give, I talk about engagement and disengaged people, and there was a study that came out in Parade magazine. And basically 35% of people who are making around $16 an hour, that was the average, they asked a question, would you rather have a 20% raise, or would you rather have your immediate boss or supervisor fired?
Wow.
And 35% said they wanted their immediate boss or supervisor fired.
Wow.
And here's why. I mean, this is what I believe. Every person on the planet, regardless of education level, whether they went to college or never went to school, no matter what work they're in, on the inside of them, there's an economist. And so for all the leaders out there, for all the people listening, there's an economist in every person out there. And so when you work for someone, the economist in your heart is saying, is my leader, are they elevating me up to the next level, or are they holding me down? Okay.
Yeah.
And so when I look at that stat, 35%, I want them fired, even though a 20% raise at $16 an hour, that's the difference between eating out once or twice a month or never eating out. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but what those people were internally saying is this: the right leader who knows how to lift me up is a much better long-term economic choice for me than a 20% raise with the wrong leader.
Yeah.
And so if we work for ourselves, we have to create the attitude, we have to create the mindset that we're going to go all in, right? Whatever we do, we're going to go all in. And then that's another great question, the litmus test that we can ask ourselves about where we work. Are the people I'm working for and with, are they focused on helping me raise up, or are they holding me down? Is there a brake on my growth here, or is there rocket fuel on my growth here? Because long term, this is a study I think Gallup did. They found people who loved their job, and there was something unique about this group of people. And these were employees, right? These were not self-employed business owners who created their own job. These were employees. And this is what they discovered. When they started in the job, they did their whole job description, whether they liked it or not, 100% as well as they could. And then the leadership of that company, whoever they were reporting to, over time allowed them to create their own job description, not by massive change, but by little choices. And the choices would be like, hey, you're doing this right now, and that's a very detailed kind of accounting type function. And we know that that's not something that you enjoy. So we're going to take that away from you as a responsibility, but we're going to add this other responsibility, which is follow up customer service with our best clients. They take about the same amount of time, but this one fits your style a lot better.
Yeah.
Okay. So the enjoyment out of the job came when the person doing the job was all in, right attitude, right mindset, doing the things they didn't like to do as best as they could. But with a leader who was constantly saying, hey, what are you really good at? Let's give you more of that. And what do you struggle with? Because it's not a natural gift or a talent. Let's see if we can get some of that out of your job description.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, that's exciting for me in the future, because I think the way the world is going, the way the remote work is going, the way technology is improving, the way AI is coming in, the leaders who are going to maximize their teams, they're going to take what I just said, that principle of putting people in the right spot and helping them grow. That's going to be the difference maker for a lot of businesses over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, it's, what you said, and I do want to put in here, I obviously have, I said this word a couple of times, I have a bias coming in here. I think I see more people, again, I'm going to call it this aspiring group, are generally going to look at the circumstances and try to make it work for them. They're more prone to try and endure maybe a lesser circumstance than to consider leaving, because that's a risk, and I'm going to talk about, okay, what's the risk of staying where you are if you could possibly be more, find more. Now you talked about, as the workplace, do you look at it and go, gosh, as a people, as an employee, especially, are they elevating me or holding me down? Because that's what my limited amount of employeedom long ago, I felt like, gosh, all I understood growing up in an entrepreneurial home under Dan and Joanne Miller was ownership, of working like it's like I own the place, or not, being responsible, not from an arrogant place, but being responsible for everything, looking at it like an owner. When we like every employee to do that, and realizing a lot of times I find people, and they would do that, they aspire to work that way, and they're not free to. I took a consulting gig 15 years ago in Silicon Valley and went and worked at this company in their offices for, it was actually only about 30 days that I worked in the offices. Then I just did the rest did it off site from that point on, but realized real quickly, I am not free to do all I see as possible here. And because of that, the relationship didn't continue. Of course, that was mostly on me because I was dissatisfied. I was not able to tolerate that. I didn't want to tolerate that. But again, asking that question is, am I being elevated or held down, or am I full to do everything that I can?
So here's another thought to look at. I think we've heard the term that, there is no freedom without sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave Ramsey, I don't know if he uses those words, but he talks about it a lot. And when I see working people who are stuck in a position that they tolerate, they feel trapped. And what's happened is they've traded their freedom for comfort. And what do I mean by this? Well, they trade in the car every 2 or 3 years on a new car. They buy a little bit more house than they probably should have. They eat out more often than they should have. And so what's happened then, and then companies, and there's whole company cultures who are like, get the car, get the sports car, go do this, get the suit, join the club, do all these different things. And suddenly you're in a situation where you're making probably above average in your industry, but it would be a financial ruin if you left the handcuffs that you've put on yourself,
sure,
without another position. And so how do you avoid it? Well, how many people, if you had a year's worth of savings, would jump as soon as you could? What if your house was paid off? Would you tolerate what you're tolerating?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times these handcuffs, they're of our own creation, because instead of saying freedom is the most important thing, freedom to walk, freedom to go do what I want, we say no, comfort's the most important thing, and our obligation and our responsibility. And so we define comfort in our culture is getting something I can't really afford now rather than paying cash for it later.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. True.
And so I think a lot of dissatisfaction is, let's just put it this way. If you felt trapped somewhere financially because you couldn't go anywhere else, you might start resenting that place, even though that place has nothing to do with it.
True.
And so that's an interesting thing to dig into.
Yeah.
So maybe the mindset, I can't tell you how many Ramsey stories I've heard where they get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and they go sell all their vehicles and they buy a couple of beaters, and all of a sudden their payments go down and they got breathing room, and where they work looks like a lot more fun.
Yeah. Well, sure. Gosh. And you could say the same thing for people who own businesses who are just, the businesses are eating them up, and it may not be the business that's eating them up, but the pressures that they have in regards to their debt and finances. Absolutely.
That business concept is one of the things that I love about Howard Partridge and our business coaching that we do. Is we are a huge proponent of hitting single after single after single after single after single. In other words, we don't go in debt. We don't put all our money into a marketing campaign. We don't, try to expand faster than we should. Every day we get up and we hit a single. And pretty soon, every day you're driving a run in or 2 runs in. That gives you growth. It gives you scale. It gives you margin. It gives you cash flow. And those things create freedom. Our ability to make good decisions when we're not under pressure. The ability to say no because we don't have to say yes is a powerful thing. And it's hard for people to understand how much that changes the nature of what it is that you do. And I love it when I see a business owner and somebody comes in and says, hey, I've got an opportunity for you. And they look at it and it really is a great opportunity. And the business owner says, you know what? I love what you're doing and I think it's good for somebody else, but it's not good for me. It just overcomplicates what we're doing. And why are they able to do that? Because they've got a game plan.
Yeah.
EOS, they've got traction, right? They've got a system. And so I wonder how much of the discontent in a place is handcuffs of our own. We put them on ourselves.
Well, like what you said, because we don't have an overall plan. We don't know what we're about and why we're about, and we don't have that overall plan. Tom, I'll never forget, it's been about 10 years ago, as I'm thinking about it, that I realized it was when I was working with so many people starting businesses and opportunities everywhere. And it was stressing me out thinking, oh my gosh, should I be a part of that one? Should I be a part of that one? And I felt like, and I remember the day or the time period, and I realized, wait, I'm doing what I want to do. Let it go. And the opportunity was stressing me out. It wasn't anything bad. It was all positive, but it was my own insecurity of thinking, gosh, I should latch onto that. Should I be a part of that? Should I invest there? Should I partner there? Because it was just all around me, and it was coming to just what you said, realizing, oh, wait a minute. One, this is killing me. And two, I'm where I don't have to try. I don't have to stress about that. Let it go. Well, Tom, here, I want us to end. This is something, again, like so many of these question and answer sessions that we do. I was not foreseeing this thread, and the thread is about retirement. So as we're talking about tolerating, enduring, whatnot, let me read a couple to you. Sarah Tipton, she says, my frustrations at work went away when I retired. Terry says, Ziglar, yep, I'm lucky enough to have been able to retire in September. I tried the attitude adjustment, but it wasn't working. Things have changed so much this year due to COVID. I was just tired of all the thefts going on in their stores and attitudes of customers. I'm blessed to have been able to change my circumstances. And then Susie kids. She says it depends on how often and how long the bouts last of frustration. It's normal to go through cycles of dissatisfaction in a job. As long as I didn't stay in a mode of dissatisfaction too long and was able to move forward, which sometimes required an attitude and or paradigm shift with the agency. I worked in the same place with many of the same people for 23 years. I kept my eye on the prize of retirement and made it there this past January. For those that find themselves perpetually dissatisfied, it's time to move on. Life is too short to be unhappy at a place where you spend most of your waking hours. It trickles into the personal realm. So I pulled out a few there because this issue of retirement, and it just, to me, brought home, again, where my biased perspective was in even asking this question, is I think we are too hesitant to make necessary circumstantial change sometimes and just focus on the attitude, which, again, we can bring the attitude to full capacity sometimes, and it's still not the place where we can be the fullest of ourselves. And so here we have people who, and we know we've all seen this, experienced it with other people. And there may be people listening right now who are in this place and they're thinking, if I can just make it to retirement, being in the, partnered with our doctor, Dr. Randy James, and seeing a lot of medical professionals. Tom, there are so many. That issue is so pervasive amongst doctors who have the perspective of being a doctor and may not flesh out what that really looks like day to day. I'm going to be a pediatrician, and every day I'm going to be working with these crying kids who think I am the most terrifying thing in their lives. They didn't think through that, and now they're in it. They've invested so much time, so much money, so much effort. There's so much on the line that then they get into it, and then they're just thinking, I'm just going to slog it out. I'm making good money. I'm buying stuff. I've got lots of assets. I'm putting money. I just got to slog it out. And they do not like what they do. It's really, I don't think people realize how prevalent it is in the profession of doctors, but we see that everywhere. People who are just trying to put their time in until retirement. And you've seen this, Tom, you experienced it with your dad and you've seen it with other people. When people, whether they retire or not, and your dad was vocal about never retiring, right?
Right.
Why would he want to retire? He loves what he does. But even those who do officially retire to some capacity, the people who I saw who loved what they did, they cared about what they did, they were very fulfilled in what they did. When they retire, I see them go on and live pretty vibrantly and abundantly and progress and find other things. Those who, again, this is my experience, but I'm going to paint with a broad brush, and I think it's relevant for most, those who put the time in and just endured and tolerated something that they were not fulfilled in until they could finally retire, did not have really vibrant retirement periods of their life. And a lot of times I think that's when we see that decline. Now they have no purpose. They didn't have joy. It's hard to revive that after 20, 30, however many years of not having joy. You don't just stop and then boom, find it all of a sudden. And you've been planting that seed of dissatisfaction for so long. I think it's hard to revive. Okay. I'm painting with a broad brush. I don't want to offend there, Tom, but man, the fact that retirement came up and just making it till the end, to me, it felt really acute and dangerous in this conversation.
The biblical perspective of it, and I've talked about this before on the show. Rabbi Lapin says in Hebrew, there's no word for retirement, because retirement has the connotation of I'm done serving others. It's time for others to serve me. So it's not really a concept, but there is the concept of sabbatical, of serving in other ways.
Yeah.
And so what I would say is, hey, you know what? You are getting a promotion. You're going to now serve other people in a new way. And I think people's identities, they get locked up in their job. And so if your identity is I'm the widget mover, and that's what gives me meaning in life, that's who I am, and then you retire, you are no longer widget moving, and therefore your identity is diminished, and these people go home and die. If your identity, if your job is, hey, I impact people who I work with who move widgets, and it's those relationships that I'm all about. Well, guess what? That's transferable. Now you can
Yeah.
go be grandma, grandpa. You can go down to the community center because you have been in the business of relationships your whole life, and you have just moved to a different work field that may not pay.
Yeah.
And that's how we serve people. I was on another podcast yesterday, no, it'd be Friday, with Mike Kinney, who's one of our ZLCers, and he gave this quote, and he said, when the space race was on, and President Kennedy, I think he was at the Space Center, and he's walking through the hallways, and there was a janitor, and he just came across him, and the janitor was mopping the floor. And the president looked at him and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Sir, I'm helping to put a man on the moon."
Yeah. It's an awesome story.
And I may have told the story a little off, but that's the point, right?
Yeah.
Why are you doing what you're doing? You know, the administrative support person in an elementary school, are they consumed with all the irritated parents of all the stuff that's going on? Or do they look at all those young kids and think, that's the future of our country? Right? Which job do they have? That's where the mindset and the attitude comes in. You get to pick the job that you're in. You get to pick and choose how I'm going to approach it.
Yeah.
And if you're in a toxic environment with other people who don't get it, then it's perfectly fine to go pick another place to do the same thing, because you're really in the people business. You're not in the widget business.
It's just got me thinking, Tom, with this, that with that aspect of, I'm going to endure this, toxic is a very, negative, but this unfulfilling work environment where I spend the majority of my time every day, every week, month, year. And then I'm going to get to the end and it'll be worthwhile, or I'm going to come to fruition and do all this great stuff. That it's daily deposits. We are training our brain. That'd be like me saying, you know what, I'm going to be sedentary for the next 10 years because I don't have time to train. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to do a marathon the next month. We can't do that. I mean, at some point, I'll never do a marathon. If you go too far, you'll never, if I don't build those daily. So if I am building every day, living in unfulfillment, bitterness, resentment, as opposed to the opposite, that's going to create who you are at the end of that, at that retirement age. And man, just dangerous. Okay. I want to do justice. Everybody, you just told the story about the, told that story there. This one is similar, and I'd never seen it to this detail. So it's the story of the three bricklayers. I didn't know that it was literally, apparently it was literally a real story. After the Great Fire of 1666 that leveled London, the world's most famous architect, Christopher Wren, was commissioned to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral. One day in 1671, Christopher Wren observed three bricklayers on a scaffold, one crouched, one half standing, and one standing tall, working very hard and fast. To the first bricklayer, Christopher Wren asked the question, "What are you doing?" To which the bricklayer replied, "I'm a bricklayer. I'm working hard, laying bricks to feed my family." Honorable. The second bricklayer responded, "I'm a builder. I'm building a wall." But the third bricklayer, the most productive of the three and the future leader of the group, when asked the question, "What are you doing?" replied with a gleam in his eye, "I am a cathedral builder. I am building a great cathedral to the Almighty." So back to your story of the guy mopping at NASA, and he's helping put a man on the moon. That's attitude adjustment right there. So I think we have to look, and can you bring yourself to that point in your workplace of being proud of what you do, of being able to be free to do the work that you can do, to make the contribution. I like that word, Tom, to make the contribution. I want to be free in my work to fully contribute all that I can. And sometimes there are just work environments where you can't. Doesn't mean they're even bad or toxic, but you just may not be able to. Can you be, because I want to be, as we mentioned a minute ago, I want to be building those seeds of training my brain to be my fullest, my most creative, my most free. every day. Man, it's such a dire topic, Tom. Yeah.
Yeah. And we've got so much at stake.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of believers who, like I do, believe in eternity. And and when you start to contemplate eternity, tongue in cheek, that's a long time.
It's a long time.
And so is what we're doing here to prepare ourselves for eternity? And are the things that we do here, will there be any significance of that in eternity?
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I believe yes, right? I believe yes. And so why are we so focused on the comfort and the payback and the results of what we get here? And I think when you put it in an eternal perspective, that allows you to work with fullness of heart with the people you're with, regardless of what you're doing. I don't think there's like a moral, there's not more moral or less moral jobs, unless it is an immoral job, right?
Right.
I'm just saying, it doesn't matter what you do, whether you're an assistant to someone, you're a salesperson, you own a business, the moral equivalent is there. They're all, good things to do. I think it's the how we do them.
Yeah.
And how we treat God's children in the process that sets us up for eternity.
Amen. I think there's our anchor right there.
There it is.
Powerful stuff. I'm going to be thinking about this even more. It may be worth another show on, I made some notes here. Tom, brother, always a gift.
Be blessed.